Hey guys, it's Brooke with SupertutorTV, and today we're going to talk about when to take the SAT subject tests. A lot of students are confused by SAT subject tests because you already have to take the SAT and then suddenly you realize, oh my goodness, I had to take this other test too? Well, you may or may not have to take it depending on what school you're applying to, but a lot of schools encourage it, and if you want to apply to a broad range of schools, it's usually an idea to take a few of them. So what I'm going to talk about in this video is just some basic strategy in terms of when if I were you, would plan to take the SAT subject tests. Okay? Cool. First principle that I'm going to talk about in terms of when to take them is the idea that you should try to align your SAT subject test exam schedule with your AP or final schedule of related classes. This is particularly true for your history exams and for your science exams. So what I mean by this is if you're taking US history, right, or AP US history, the time when you want to take the subject test is at the end of the year of US history class. So you're going to be probably studying for an AP exam. If you're in AP US history, that's in May. You might be studying for a final for the course, and your finals might be in June. So I recommend that you take the SAT subject test either in May or of June, the year that you will be taking the course that corresponds with it. So here's the theory behind this. If you're already prepping for an AP exam or a final exam in a particular subject matter, well, heck, it's a heck of a lot easier to prepare for an SAT subject test for that exam when you're already studying for it and you just completed all that work, right? There are a couple of exceptions in terms of taking it to dovetail with your AP exam. The math, you could kind of go either way. I would say that you can take the math exam whenever you have time to prepare for it, because unlike, say, the physics exam, which is going to test you on all of physics, which you take in 1 year, math is more cumulative, right? You take math almost every year in high school, and the math exam is going to test you on all the math that you've taken, right, through pre-calculus. So it's going to include geometry, it's going to include algebra, it's going to include trigonometry. And so you probably are going to have to go back and review some concepts potentially in order to do well on that exam. So you don't necessarily have to take it right at the end of pre-calc. You could also take it November of senior year. A lot of students like to take it. So with the math, you could be a little bit more flexible depending on what you're comfortable with or how well you retain math. The Math 2 is probably the more popular of the math exams. And to do the Math 2 exam, you need to have finished pre-calculus. The other big exception to the rule in terms of taking it to dovetail with your AP exam is the literature exam. The SAT literature exam is actually a lot more like the SAT 1 reading comprehension portion with poetry and plays. So if you're going to be taking that exam, I would actually recommend that you wait until the end of your junior year or early in senior year, because the theory is that you're going to become a better reader the longer you read, right? So for those, I usually like to wait till sort of the end of the year, and you don't necessarily have to dovetail that with your AP exam in literature. In fact, you might be taking AP Lit senior year, and then by the end of the year, it's going to be too late to take it. But because it's more of just a general reading exam, it's the kind of thing that you can prepare for at any time of the year. And then the third exception is foreign languages. Because foreign languages, like math, are cumulative, you may be able to take a foreign language exam at any given time, or what I always like to say is take it as late as possible or when you have a lot of time to prepare for it. A lot of students, I'll recommend that they take the language exam actually November of senior year, because then they'll have as much time as humanly possible to learn that language, so they won't totally fall on their face. And the other exception to language is if you're a speaker at home of a language. Let's say your parents speak Korean and you know Korean really well and you're just going to go take the Korean exam. You might be able to ace that when you're like a sophomore, and so that's something you could probably go in and get out of the way. A few other things to keep in mind. For all these exams, you want to complete them before your college applications are due. Some of these tests are only given in certain months. Language with listening, for example, is only given like 2 months out of the year. So with that exam, you really got to plan ahead and make sure you've got the dates right. A lot of you may be applying for early action or early decision, and usually anything submitted for early action or early decision needs to be in by November 1st. But this is complicated by the fact that I would say about half of schools, even competitive schools, don't actually require these tests, they just recommend them. So if they just recommend them and you turn in a November test date exam, they still may be able to look at that before they release their decisions. And it still may count toward your admission there. But for schools that do require SAT subject tests, it's a really good idea to at least have the number of required exams done by that November 1st date. It doesn't mean that you can't add some in if you wanted to add in the language or something in November. Above all though, the SAT one is more important than the subject test, so make sure you get that on your calendar first, and then you can plan when to take the subject tests. And know that you can't take both tests on the same date. So for example, if you plan to take the SAT October of senior year, you're not going to be able to take the SAT subject test that same month because they're on the literal same day, same time. Can't do it. So that complicates this whole situation a little bit more, and that's why it's a good idea to plan ahead. And that's why you're watching this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Join us on the social media interweb. If you haven't already seen it, I recommend you also check out our other video on the SAT subject test. It's about what top schools require, so you can get a little bit of a feel for how many of these things you have to take. I will see you guys all next time. Ciao, ciao.